a little bit more freedom, so they're just going to focus on taking Fnatic away off some of their comfort or power picks.
And I think the question becomes now for Fnatic, you know your first place. You don't have to show anything. Do you just stick with the normal meta, or do you experiment a little bit and try out some new strategies against the team you expected to beat?
Fnatic spent half a split trying out new strategies, Medic. Then when they went to international competition, it did not go so well for them. So I think they should just keep it meta. They should keep it try hard. They want to guarantee themselves a win. They do not want to be upset like G2 was, because you don't really want to end your split like that. And bear in mind, Fnatic still have G2 left to play against, and I'm sure that both teams will want to be in form going into that series.
Right, coming off a win is definitely better than coming off a loss like G2 did. Ninjas in Pyjamas will lock in the Tristana as their first pick. Not something we always see prioritized.
Tristana raises in value when so many of the other AD carries are banned away. Some AD carries have chosen to go more towards the Xayah, but it seems like that with Tristana being used as a possible answer for Kalista, her ability to siege, and a surprisingly strong pushing power when it comes to laning phase, and later on when sieging against towers, it just adds a little bit more value that teams seem to consider of higher importance.
Does mean Fnatic can lock in the Jarvan IV sOAZ in the top lane. 6 wins out of 6 games for him on that champion. Pretty sure he'll be wanting to make that 7 of 7. And we will have the Thresh for Jesiz as well.
Very early priority of the Orianna for Nagne as well. They banned away the Syndra, so they want to make sure they can guarantee something strong. This raises the priority on champions like the Talia, which we have seen Caps bring out. They don't necessarily have to focus on it now. That's a cheeky hover, but you should never really trust with that's the grin of I'm hovering it, but I ain't locking it in.
That's the grin you do when you think you've told a good joke. It's just like, guys, come on, that was funny. That was funny,
That
guys.
is definitely the grin that I have. 4 seconds left.
I like this. I like that. I like that even more. It's going to be Azir. Bird is the word in the mid lane for Caps.
This is the first time I've ever heard people cheer for an Azir. We had a whole meta of Azir and Victor, and people were happy to see them go, but it has been a while. He did receive some buffs, patch 7.15, that's what I'm looking for. And really, all it boils down to is the soldiers do a little bit more damage. At every level, it stacks onto each soldier as well, so he does a fair amount of additional damage. A lot of the other mids in Europe right now do consider him much more of a stronger pick. And right now we're just seeing it. Perhaps this is one of those experimentation things you were discussing. If it doesn't work out, it's fine. Fnatic, they don't lose much out on it if they fall behind, but it gives you that opportunity, a bit of practice, play on stage, see how well it works with the team and against opposition.
Definitely, and I want to delve deeper into that Azir pick and that mid lane matchup as we get into the game. But now we do see the Kayn ban from Fnatic, and NIP will take away the Camille, thinking that this Jarvan could still be flexed into the jungle.
That's very true. Rumble may very well be an additional ban going towards Fnatic, something that is considered a decent matchup into the Gnar. Yasuo is another pick, but we've only seen it once over in the LCK as an answer to Gnar. It did end up winning that game, but since then we haven't really seen many others. Renekton would be something risky. I wonder if they could go for something like a Cho'Gath as well. It would give you a fair amount of sustain. On 7.15, we've seen a lot less priority on the champion, especially up in the top lane. But Fnatic, they still have a lot of options available to them.
Jhin is taken away from them, and that narrows that AD carry pool even more. Kalista gone, Caitlyn gone, Jhin gone, Tristana gone. Where are you looking now if you are Fnatic?
I feel like you want to try and save that possible counter pick in the top lane for last. You want to lock in your AD carry. You have a few options. Oh no, instead they're just going to prioritize the Kled. So as you rightly called out, that Jarvan has the ability to flex into the jungle, which is what he's going to do right now. So they're going to save their AD carry counter till the very end. And this does suggest that Fnatic, they're considering running a static AD carry, something like the Ashe or the Varus. So they want to see what is left in the opposition before they guarantee that. And if something like an Alistar comes through, then you're definitely moving away from one of those more static AD carries that doesn't have a dash or an escape.
Sprattel, especially on this Alistar, has shown how effective he can be at isolating targets. Enemy AD carries are a great target to go for, and it will be the Sejuani in the jungle as well for NIP. So we've only got the AD carry left for Fnatic, and a lot of options to choose from.
So Sivir is still available, Xayah is still available. Calling them out just as you have us over all of them. The thing about Tristana is there aren't really a huge number of weak matchups, and I feel like Xayah would be the best thing to lock in because it's very safe. You have a fair amount of wave clear, you have your own peeling tool, and it fits very nicely with the composition, which is very much about scaling for Fnatic. Azir and Xayah, very late game orientated champions, very geared towards team fighting, especially when you pair them up with the Jarvan and the Kled engage. They can play a bit of a 1-4, maybe 1-3-1 style, but Fnatic mainly want to be winning through team fights, very similar to what Ninjas in Pyjamas do. The big difference is Ninjas in Pyjamas, they hit a little bit of a spike earlier on with the 2 items. When someone like Orianna, Morello into Ludens, or Morello into Liandry's, 2 very powerful items that give you a lot of damage very early on into the game. And so they could be looking to fight, force fights a little bit earlier with the Sejuani engage and the Alistar follow-up that they have in their combo.
NIP still have a mountain to climb. We'll see if those team fights materialize in the middle of the game. I would love it. 2 team fight compositions, butting horns. And if you want to support one of them, jump onto Twitter at LOL eSports, #NIPwin, if you think the Ninjas in Pyjamas can sabotage Fnatic's hopes of cleaning out the week, and #FNCwin, if you think the #1 team in Group A is just as unstoppable as they look.
We're going to have a lot of fights this game, Medic.
Oh, baby!
It is your job to yell about them, so you better be prepared. The audience has high expectations of your yelling.
That's very high expectations of yelling. I believe that cheering is more for Fnatic than for me, and can you blame them? Fnatic on the best run since summer 2015, and now we get onto the Summoner's Rift once again. And Vedius, I want to come back to a few of these specific matchups while we've got time as these teams settle in, especially the middle lane. Caps on Azir has not played that champion once this split into Nagne's Orianna, a champion he's a lot more comfortable on. How do we expect this matchup to go?
It's not very exciting, unfortunately, Medic. It is very much focused on farming. We talked about how Azir is more towards late game. He scales exceptionally well, which means that his early game doesn't have a huge amount of impact. He's had a number of nerfs over a very long period of time, and basically what it boils down to is extremely effective DPS in these later game teamfights, along with good zoning and playmaking potential. The thing about his ultimate is in early levels, it's not actually that big. You only have 4 shieldsmen, which means that the window to actually make plays is a lot harder. There's a lot more room to get that outplay. Whereas once you get 2 and 3 points in it, that's where you get those additional shields. It starts getting really big, and large areas of the jungle actually becomes very difficult to maneuver around. So that's why levels are extremely important. That's why Caps isn't going to try and force anything during the laning phase. If you can get a few early kills, definitely a benefit to him. But his priority is not winning, it's just going even, or at the very least not falling behind. In terms of trading, Orianna is definitely going to have the advantage. She has the shield, and if Azir wants to proc his, he has to get into the face of Ori, who's going to have those empowered auto attacks. So he's just going to want to look to push and stay away from Nagne, who's going to look to get as many Qs and Ws on him as possible.
Nagne looking for the harass in the mid lane. That's something Caps has done very well across the split. Actually leads our damage per minute charts out of any player on any champion. He has the most consistent damage in that middle lane. We did see Broxah and sOAZ start up at that red buff. It looks like Broxah's going to path down towards the bottom side of the map. Usually we see Broxah and sOAZ combining for that first blood. They tend to be together. sOAZ actually very good at securing first blood, considering he's a top lane.
Well, he is playing this Kled right now. It will be a little difficult to set up a gank onto a Gnar, given the amount of mobility that Gnar does have. As long as he doesn't use his jump too aggressively, he should be fine. I feel like Jarvan right now is more geared towards making sure that the bottom half of the map is wadded up. So you can see he's just taken his blue. He'll now transition that into a Scuttle Crab. And because the bottom lane of Rekkles and Jesiz is just constantly pushing, having that vision in the river, having the vision also in the Tri-Brush, guarantees an additional bit of safety so they can continue to push into this Tristana Alistar lane and get themselves an early CS lead, while also giving you good control around the Ocean Drake. How we have heard from players like Sven and that this early Ocean Drake is actually extremely valuable during the laning phase.
Hook is going to land onto HeaQ, but Jez is just using it for harass more than anything. And having these early leads is something that Fnatic do incredibly well, and NIP were actually doing well themselves at the start of the split. However, over the last few weeks, their early leads have tended to fall off. From weeks 6 to 9, they've only had 50% of first towers, only 33% of those first bloods, and they really struggle at getting that early dragon as well.
So what we're saying is one of the greatest strengths that NIP had for them going through the split no longer seems to be one of their greatest splits, yet they were able to get their first win of the season against Roccat with this slight change in playstyle. And I feel like it's just NIP realizing that they don't have to guarantee an early snowball to really translate into that advantage. All they need is strong laners and presence, as Jesiz exerts his presence in the mid.
It's just rude, really. That's just rude. Nagne just wanted to back. Caps was pushed back in the lane anyway. Nagne wanted to go back and start picking up those items.
But it's a life lesson for mid laners at home. Don't back in the middle of the lane. You might think that it's a little bit faster, but it is not the safest option. Imagine a jungler just comes out of the jungle right there. Imagine a support roams at mid. Well, boom, you don't have to imagine it. You've got first-hand experience of how your back can be interrupted by a whole 8 seconds.
And Jesiz does this so well. We've seen him do it time and time again throughout the split.
Interrupting backs.
Interrupting backs, leaving the lane early on, harassing enemy laners. And a lot of the talk around MVP for the split focuses on Rekkles or Caps or Broxah, but I think we both agree that Jesiz is definitely up there as well as one of the best players on this Fnatic team.
Well, you can't take anything away from him, right? Because he's able to make plays like this.
We'll just flash away there from Nagne, and once again, it's Jesiz, as you say, in that middle lane.
All right, so Jesiz actually didn't do anything there, but his presence was enough to allow Caps to go into the face of Nagne, force the flash out from Orianna, and now he has the opportunity to look for another roam in the mid lane a little later on. Notice how he went for a very early boots rush, went for an early back. Yes, Rekkles and Jesiz, there's a little bit of pressure down in the bottom lane, but this is so different to the Fnatic that we've been so used to for so long. Yes, we have seen a shift in their playstyle, but now you can see Fnatic's not all about playing towards Rekkles and making sure that he succeeds.
And speaking of difference, just got informed by our wonderful stat team that Broxah, Caps, and Rekkles are all playing these champions for the first time in 2017. We wondered if they'd experiment. Maybe this was planned, or maybe it's as a result of Roccat beating G2 earlier.
It could very well be. So they are experimenting a little bit. They're going outside their comfort zone traditionally, but they're still strong champions. They still fall under the realms of the meta. And so far we are seeing them perform okay, but we're only 6 minutes into the game, man. So I will hold judgment for now to see a bit of trading up top.
sOAZ going to charge away. It's a pretty easy escape for him, not as mechanically wonderful an escape as we usually see from sOAZ. I'd expect him to dodge through a couple of bushes, then teleport.
Are you trying to imply that other champions that can press R as not impressive to disengage?
Yeah, yes I am. In all honesty, if you only have to press one key to get away from a fight, you have not mechanically outplayed your opponent.
Oh, I'm sorry, guy that can use flash on every champion.
We'll have to see perhaps if sOAZ needs to flash away here, because HeaQ is waiting in the bush. There is a ward there, but it had been controlled. HeaQ decides he doesn't want to take the fight. Caps engages, does use the streamer shuffle, and here's Jesiz once again. Broxah joins the fray. The shockwave brings them back, and Nagne's still alive. Broxah takes up a couple of tower shots, but Jesiz will get knocked up by Sprattel. He helps Caps secure the kill in mid.
And this is Fnatic repeating the pressure in the middle lane, trying to set up Caps for success rather than play around Rekkles. And while we have seen so many shifts in Fnatic's playstyle, this investment in mid reminds me of what Cloud9 did to Fnatic during Rift Rivals, where Caps struggled so much. Send your support early to the middle lane, punish this low mobility mid lane mage, as HeaQ is able to actually get the flash out of Caps.
Jesiz here once again. Who needs a support in bottom lane? We're going back to Season 2. It's jungle support roaming duos. Alistar from level 1 just joins his jungler. Jesiz can do the same. And this is what we wanted to see from Fnatic. Cast your mind back to Rift Rivals Vedius, where the Fnatic animal style got totally shut down by the NA teams. Since then, we've seen Rekkles move to more meta AD carries, play a very strong role in getting Fnatic these wins, and now we see more experimentation from them working out.
Yeah, and I think it's really worth praising Jesiz once again, enabling Caps to make this kind of play, enabling him to get this early lead, but also just punishing the correct champion. Orianna is a mid lane mage that does have the advantage early on in this 1 versus 1. When her flash is down, she is extremely susceptible to ganks. And you cannot invest that much in early vision to make sure that she stays alive. And even if you did, Jesiz walked behind the turret. There's little that you can do when you're being attacked from 3 sides, when you have no flash, when Caps lands a fantastic ultimate, and Jesiz doesn't even have to use his hook until after you've used everything to try and get away. It was a great setup from Fnatic. They start off strong, and so far they hold onto a bit of an early lead as Fnatic look for another roam up mid.
About 600 gold ahead, and that first kill, of course. Still no first tower blood for them as Jesiz once again is around that middle lane. Glacial Prism does not quite connect. Jesiz will flay them back, but this might be the first blood for NIP as Jesiz has been called out by 3 members of the Ninjas. A kill for Nagne in that middle lane will get him back into this matchup against Caps.
Oh. You can't make the same play more than once, unfortunately, Medic. It worked great earlier on. You went for a roam mid, you take away his flash, then you come with the jungler, and great, you're able to get the kill. But NIP responded. They realized, oh, okay, if you're never going to spend any time in the bottom lane, neither am I. We know that our Tristana has the pushing value down in the bottom lane because of our explosive charge, because of what Tristana does. It becomes very difficult for Xayah to really hold her. That means that Sprattel can get into the river, get these wards down much faster than Jesiz can. And with Shook hanging around, seeing where Jesiz is, it's just a matter of time before they're able to get the punish, get the collapse, and get themselves a very valuable early Ocean Dragon.
Ocean Dragon, of course, so good if you get it early on in the game, doesn't give you as much later on in these matchups. And this is something we've seen from Fnatic in the past. They sometimes get this early lead, but then struggle to actually be able to extend it against lower tier teams. If you look at the blue line, that is how Fnatic do against teams that are in the playoffs at the moment. They tend to be able to extend their gold lead in a uniform fashion, whereas the orange line is how they do against the lower tier teams. Caps actually got caught out here by Nagne. Nagne just needs to flash! And that's a kill onto Caps in the mid lane.
And this is why this graph is so relevant right now, because teams below them always find ways to punish Fnatic. Fnatic don't seem to show that same level of respect that they do against opposition that seems to be on equal footing to them, at least from a score or perception standpoint. The fact that Nagne gets a solo kill onto Caps is going to be massive in terms of momentum and getting him back into the lane. We talked about how Orianna early on wins out in that 1 versus 1. She has more damage with fewest or with similar itemization, and that results in Caps dropping. He had no flash, and he gives away a solo kill to Nagne.
As we get to this 11-minute mark, we are going to start to see that first item spike be hit for NIP. What point is it that NIP can really utilize these early spikes when they get... Do they need 2 items on all of their carries, or can they just go with 1 or 1.5 and try and force Fnatic to fight?
So, NIP can easily force a fight when Shook has completed an item. The Cinderhulk is already good to go. So I feel like, depending on what he goes for, I'm expecting a Righteous Glory or maybe a Knight's Vow to come out from him second. Once that is done, NIP are good to make fights happen. But you might not have the damage. It depends on the gap between you and your opposition. Now, if Nagne and HeaQ complete, let's say, a BF Sword and a Morelnomicon, whereas Caps and Rekkles are still on their components, best not to fight. That is a great opportunity to fight because you know you're going to have that slight item advantage. You know your champions are a little bit stronger at that point in the game. But if you're both on even items, then it's a bit of a risk. So it's very much about tracking the items and seeing what has been completed for either side before you really try and force a fight.
Alongside that, you can look at kills for gold and towers for gold, but you also have to look at CS for gold. And Prophet has a 20 farm lead in that top lane. Rekkles had a small CS advantage in the AD carry role, but that's equalized out as NIP have spent a little bit more time down in that bottom lane as a duo.
The thing about Kled up in the top lane, one thing that we heard from North American teams when they did come over to Europe was that Kled has value at all points in the game. Because of his ultimate, because of his trading power, just because of who he is as a champion, he's always going to be useful, even if he falls behind. So the fact that he's at a deficit right now is not the biggest end of the world for Fnatic, because he will be able to contribute later into the game, even at a deficit. And I think that's the core thing to take away from sOAZ. As long as he can hold onto this tower as long as possible, and if Fnatic can get that bot tower in exchange, then sOAZ has done his job. It's just very much now that sOAZ, or Fnatic rather, still need to support a little bit more around sOAZ because they do not want to lose that first tower if they can avoid it.
Once again, Caps gets harassed. The shockwave doesn't quite connect unless Nagne was just going for that minion. You never know. Makes the CSing easier in that middle lane. And for the time being, Caps is able to keep himself alive. Does have his flash back up, and Nagne does not have his. So we'll see if perhaps Broxah decides that mid lane is ripe for a gank once again.
But look at the difference in vision, Medic. You can see all across the top side. Look at all these control wards and deep blue wards that have been set up by Shook and Prophet and the roaming Sprattel from earlier on. they are littering this top side of the map because they are fully aware that Broxah is going to come soon to try and defend this tower. And they want to make sure the Prophet has the knowledge to allow him to just keep pushing while both HeaQ and Sprattel keep defending their tower in the bottom lane. The Dragon's going to be spawning in about 2 minutes, and I imagine that'll be a big point of contention for both these teams.
Is a second Ocean, of course, strong, as we mentioned earlier. The quicker you get it in a game, and Fnatic are looking to try and react to this top lane pressure by bringing 4 members down to the bottom side. Not going to go for the engage just quite yet. NIP do, of course, have the Alistar there, and they've got HeaQ there as well, 2 strong tanks who can lock you up underneath the tower if you go for the dive.
There's always the risk, right? Like, as you rightly said, you don't want to try and force something that isn't guaranteed to go in your favor. Prophet has the TP. If sOAZ TP'd in, he'd be at a health disadvantage. So there's that additional risk too. And Alistar, Sejuani, there's a lot of crowd control, a lot of disengage. The Tristana ultimate too. Best not risk it, but they had to try and make a play onto that tower because they knew that top lane was going to go down. They want to try and make the trade down bot. And unfortunately for Fnatic, they were unable to do so. So NIP, they've gotten themselves an early lead without the use of snowballing from ganks from HeaQ. They haven't relied on trying to find these early picks to translate into a big CS or big gold advantage.
And it's a 2,000 gold lead at the 15-minute mark, Vedius. If this was Fnatic, we'd say they were rolling away with the game. NIP now, a strong gold lead, first tower, a big top laner. This is looking very good for NIP.
Oh, it is. But remember what we talked about in terms of item spikes, how they're a good indicator of when a team is likely to fight. Rekkles has been completed for Nagne, along with the Nash's Tooth for Caps. So, to give a bit of context on that, if anyone hasn't seen Azir for a while, this is now the best first item to rush because the attack speed that it gives you, along with the 20% early cooldown reduction. Both stats extremely valuable on a champion like Azir, and it gives you 80 ability power. So, sure, you don't have the same level of AP as the Rekkles, but the added attack speed better synergizes with your kit, which makes up for that loss of DPS. But
you promised me team fights, Vedius.
Yeah.
You said to me, Medic, you're going to have to shout a lot. I've yet to shout this game, and I'm getting disappointed here,
But I also
Vedius,
said
because you promised me team fights.
I also promised you 2 late game teams. Those early focus is just going to be on farming, leveling up, completing items, and the 2 item spikes is where I promised you team fights. And we're not there just yet, but we're very quickly edging that way.
There we are. Prophet's finished his Black Cleaver, a Morello-Nomicon for Nagne to answer that Nash's Tooth. I have had an update from my stats team. Remember earlier on I said that in the last 4 weeks, NIP, when they've had a gold lead at the 15-minute mark, have had a win. That is a 100% record for them. 3 gold leads at 15 minutes and 3 wins. Will this be their 4th? Well, Fnatic say no as they once again bring Broxah and Caps down towards this bottom side. They have a couple of man advantage, but Prophet does have teleport if NIP want to fight around this Ocean Dragon.
So I'm looking at some of the map setup right now. The problem is for Fnatic is that NIP, they have push in mid. Orianna building a healthy CS lead, feeling very strong right now. 4 stacks on the Dark Seal as well. Something that's always important to take into consideration. There's pressure up top, which makes it even easier for Prophet to TP into these lanes too. And Tristana, yet to complete the Infinity Edge, but does still have the pushing advantage in the 2 versus 2 lanes. So NIP, they have strong laners that got a bit of an early lead thanks to a few misplays from Caps that have allowed right now NIP to have control. And this is giving them priority around these big objectives like Drake, but so far not the Rift Herald, which, given the amount of pressure the Prophet's putting in the top lane, that could be a big objective for them to play around, but their focus is on the bottom side.
We're looking for the second Ocean Drake. Broxah is in the vicinity. Pops the Scryer's Bloom. We'll get just a sneak of vision on towards HeaQ, and perhaps we'll look for the steal. Sprattel can knock him away. Fnatic a little bit too slow to react, and the second Ocean Dragon goes to NIP. Great objective control. Getting 2 dragons out of 2 this game when they've been averaging 8% of the dragons in the last few weeks.
And this is NIP using pressure extremely well, taking advantage of their advantages, and just punishing the composition of Fnatic, which is very geared towards late game. And this is the thing, when you have 2 compositions that scale extremely well, when one has a slight lead over the other, it's actually a very big gap that allows you to just keep pushing, keep trying to make plays around the map. But we're seeing another 4-man setup from Fnatic in the bottom lane, especially as both Alistar and Tristana have just gone back to base. They're going to make their way mid as Profit continues to rattle on sOAZ in the top lane.
It's looking towards that frozen Mallet second as well. Fnatic will eventually take this bot lane tower. They equalize the structure score at 1-for-1, but they are still in a gold deficit of about 1,000 gold. And earlier on, we talked about the vision coming out from NIP. Look at how many control wards they have picked up, ready to set up around this Rift Herald and perhaps around the Baron.
Junglers at home, take note. 3 control wards picked up by HeaQ. This man is not just going to drop his control ward and then leave it there. He's prepared in the event that it gets cleared out. He's also prepared to move the vision later on in the event that NIP win a big fight or gain some kind of objective advantage. And this is smart play from NIP. They took the Ocean Drake. They knew that Fnatic would stick around bot and that their bottom lane wouldn't be able to react to this objective in time. Profit has now been moved to the bottom lane, and they can look to utilize this Rift Herald either on the tier 2 in the top lane or in the mid against a strong wave clearing Azir.
We had some early game around that mid, but since then, hasn't really been that much focus. Nagne able to clear out the wave, push Caps back. Caps counter pushes, but perhaps we'll see a little bit more action around it. We have finally got that first completed item, the Jungler. The jungle enchant has been upgraded on HeaQ, so perhaps he will start looking for these team fights that we expect from NIP.
Looking very closely as well at some of the other items being completed across the board. Nothing too significant for the time being. Just a little bit of trading back and forth between wards. And if NIP really want to impress me, then they'll start fighting for vision, because that's definitely a Korean special that you often only ever see in the LCK. Or H2K, believe it or not. And fighting for vision is really a difficult skill to master because it's about knowing when is a good time to fight and also what vision is worth fighting over. There's no point starting a big fight over wards around Baron if you're not strong enough to actually take the Baron yourself. So right now, NIP, they don't feel confident enough to force the fight. All they care about is just making sure they have as much vision as possible. And look now, still a control ward left on HeaQ. No control wards left on Fnatic. So if they ever trade a control ward for control ward, it will be NIP that have that vision advantage.
Herald used in the mid in a 4v3. Shockwave onto Jesiz, doesn't connect. Herald gets a chunk of damage down onto that mid lane tower, but will not be able to secure the objective as Fnatic react pretty well in that middle lane.
Good use of the Rift Herald though, because all 4 members of Fnatic have now been brought mid. This has allowed HeaQ to push up top lane, and Profit is continuing to push down bottom.
And people might wonder why we're praising NIP. You know, they're bottom of the group, they're going to go to the promotion tournament, but it's so important that they revitalize the early game style they had earlier in the splits if they're going to win in promotions. Fnatic have been able to push onto this mid lane tower, not quite able to take it down, but coming back to my point, NIP here are showing us a team that could very well beat out Giants and Schalke in the promotion tournament over the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's their hope. NIP, their goal this split was to stay in the LCS so they can build Caps.
Oh, Caps' goal is to stay on the Rift, but he's not able to enact that as NIP are able to collapse. Jesiz doesn't quite get connected by the Sejuani, but Sprattel flashes in. HeaQ with the jump as well. The explosive shot is enough. Another kill for NIP, and Fnatic are just rolling over in front of the Ninjas.
And this is the beginning of it, Medic. You can see bot tier 1 goes down, mid tier 1, the map is opening up. Baron is a point of contention. Ocean Drake going to be spawning soon? No, forget that. Baron's going to be a fight right now, Medic, but there's a lot of ultimates still available for the side of NIP.
Still that control ward put down in the pit. We're going to see the teleport in as well from Profit. Here are sOAZ and Broxah. They need to duo up to try and steal away the Baron. NIP have it down to 2,000 HP. sOAZ jumps in, so does Broxah. 1,000. The Buster steals it, and Fnatic are going to be able to take away that objective from NIP. They'll lose Broxah. sOAZ with the flash may be able to get out of this one as he jousts his way through the minion line. Jez is there with a hook. The shockwave lands onto 2 though, and NIP are not quite done yet. But Fnatic want this fight. They've got Baron, and they have a taste for blood.
You may lose Broxah, but 4 members of your team walk away with the Baron. NIP, they go for a risky play. They know that the enemy jungler is still alive, yet they go for it anyway. And rather than stopping, they feel confident to force Broxah out of the pit. They fail, and now they're going to lose a lot of the early game that they have so cleanly built up for themselves.
A 2,000 gold lead disappears in minutes when the enemy team has a Baron. Another objective for Fnatic. They group up towards the mid, and this is only going to get them towards that team fight composition they want so much quicker.
Woof.
Woof,
Rough
indeed.
situation for NIP. So let's have a look. Broxah. You can see the position of Sprattel. They just want to knock him back. HeaQ as well. Has his ulti. But the EQ combo still comes through. They're too late. Sprattel gets knocked up, so his knockback gets interrupted. It feels like Tristana missed it as well. They tried to focus down the Baron instead. Well, their focus turns onto Broxah rather than the Baron. And they should have just gone over the wall sooner. They should have never given him the opportunity to get close enough to land that QE. And then we see the following fight afterwards where NIP had just forced to disengage. So I feel like NIP, the execution there was a little bit greedy. They should have just tunneled onto Broxah, maybe even just turned to get the kill. Because really, the goal there was to prevent Fnatic from getting the Baron as much as it was getting it for yourself.
Meager desserts for NIP as they will take the third Ocean Drake of the game, but you just have to look at Fnatic, and this is the reason we say they have that MVP quality. Broxah with the steal, sOAZ with the distraction, Jesiz with the hooks afterwards as well to help Fnatic re-engage that fight. Every single member of this team steps up when they're needed, and that's the reason they are first in Group A. Fnatic are going to be able to push in this top lane as well. That's 3 towers they've taken off just this Baron buff. They've got a minute left on it. And how important is it for sOAZ in this side lane to have a Baron as well? Because Prophet has been continually pushing him back, but sOAZ with those empowered minions can actually hold the wave a little bit better.
Oh, look at sOAZ. He's now level 15. As he rightly says, he has a lot of wave clear to, at the very least, hold Prophet much better than he could before. But he's also going to have much easier value in these team fights. The ultimate's going to nicely set up Fnatic to force these fights. You have a Jarvan follow-up too, as they try to force a fight down the bottom lane.
sOAZ runs a little bit wide there. He doesn't understand where the track is. Prophet trying to track up towards the top side. A great feather storm from Rekkles dodges out the Gnar and roots up Prophet. Rekkles with his first kill and his first contribution to the game.
Beautiful kill from Rekkles, utilizing his skills perfectly. Landing the root, staying just out of range of Prophet, dodging all the skills. Caps, he's not in any danger because of his mobility. And everything now going in the favor of Fnatic after a fantastic Baron steal from Broxah. There was such a big tower advantage in favor of NIP, which has now swung so rapidly in Fnatic's favor. HeaQ is not with the team, so Fnatic are going to keep their push.
Almost a 4,000 gold swing with that Baron buff. From 2,000 ahead, NIP are now 2,000 behind. However, Vedius, they have hit this 2-item spike we discussed in Picks and Bans. We said NIP might be slightly stronger if they get to those 2 items. Fnatic are sitting on the same, except for Rekkles, who has now picked up his 3rd completed item.
And that's the key difference. Yes, it's great when you get to the 2 items. You may very well just be a little bit stronger, but it depends on the opposition's itemization, and if you're at 2 items while they're at 2.5, those fights look a lot more even, or if nothing else, more Fnatic favored in those kind of exchanges. So I think that right now it's difficult for NIP to try and force a fight. They're looking to get themselves a pick, wait for someone to be caught out of position. But the only person that's likely to be overextended and in an isolated spot is Caps, but he's now got himself an early Banshee's Veil, and now he's completed the Rylai's. So this guy has so many disengage tools, he becomes extremely difficult to catch. And things are becoming harder and harder for NIP. That Baron has really swung so much in the favor of Fnatic.
Sprattel getting harassed down by Caps a little bit there. I slightly underestimated the gold swing with Baron. It was a 6,500 gold power play for them. And it just allows Fnatic to get to this late game, get to these team fights. Although we haven't seen too many 5v5s. Fnatic trying to rectify that as sOAZ jumps in. The hook does not connect, but Sprattel is pulled back by the bear trap on a rope. NIP going to be able to reset this fight as Fnatic decide they just want to put down a Disc of the Sun.
No TP used from Prophet. He's going to continue his pushes. He knows his team can disengage. Rekkles off onto a side lane. Very more conventional from what we see of the Fnatic squad.
Give him a new champion, but he still does the same things on this Xayah.
Just clearing out the sideways, guys. I'm not a split pusher, I promise.
The ninjas here actually practicing a traditional ninja strategy from the 15th century. I did my research before this. I thought I'll look up some ninja war strategies, some sabotage and infiltration strategies.
Right.
And they had one called Hitsuke. And what Hitsuke meant was if you were trying to infiltrate a building, you would light a fire somewhere else, and the guards would be distracted by the fire, and then you'd be able to infiltrate the building. So what NIP have done if they said, Prophet, you will be our fire. You will distract Fnatic in a side lane, and then we'll try and take the fight somewhere else.
Wow. Who would have thought that the distraction had the name of Hitsuke? If only we had more fire in this game.
Exactly. If it was a brand or something, it would work a little bit better.
That would have been the key. That's what the NIP are lacking right now. Instead, they do have a giant snow ice boar who can act as another form of engagement, right? You know, as much as you want to get into the building, sure, you can use a fire and you can distract and say, hey, look over there. But while they're all looking over there, you need some kind of battering ram to say, surprise! And you hit them in the face with a giant block of ice.
Or a shockwave to knock down the walls as well, if you're trying to get into
right?
the
So
building.
that clearly NIP, going back to their heritage and their classical arts.
Well, it might explain why they've lost so many games this split if they're using 15th century tactics. A lot of people have had some time to research those. But NIP have been able to stall out this game a little bit here, Vedius. Still only a 2,500 gold lead for Fnatic. We are getting towards that later game portion where we said the team fights are going to be more Fnatic favored.
Yes, they have an extremely powerful late game comp. That doesn't mean that NIP's composition isn't strong in the late game. It's just much harder to execute, right? Orianna getting into the thick of things, utilizing that ball, compared to the range of Azir, much harder to execute. Tristana has a lot of mobility, and compared to Rekkles, yes, but in terms of ability to self-peel and utility, Xayah arguably offers a little bit more. We talked a lot about how Kled always offers teamfight value, whereas Gnar has the Gnar bar that you always have to play around. It's just easier to execute as Nagne's been caught.
Broxah jumps in with the Cataclysm, needs the shockwave to knock down those walls. Here comes Shook as well, and NIP look for the re-engage, but Fnatic have them pincered between two sides of this fight. Fnatic not quite going any further. Broxah is going to get pushed back by Prophet, who's trying to build up that Gnar bar.
NIP, they're just forced to disengage right now. They didn't lose any members. Heal was used from HeaQ along with Nagne. But aside from that, no other summoners are used. Fnatic still feeling healthy on the summon account. sOAZ just waiting for an opportunity to engage. Here is the classic Fnatic brush.
NIP have just pushed way too far up. Their vision in the early game was good, but they're going to look for the engage. NIP actually go on the front foot as Jesiz gets chunked down to half. Shook caught off in the backline by sOAZ. Prophet's killed Jesiz. sOAZ knocked up. Sprattel there as well. He will get the stun, and NIP now running to the wrong base, guys. You can infiltrate, but you need to take down the towers first. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get any further into Fnatic's base. However, Fnatic not going to go for a full-on engage here.
Look at the power of the Ocean Drake along with the Warmogs on Shook. He's regenerating so much HP after Fnatic did lose their support. TP coming back in from sOAZ, but he doesn't have his ulti. I don't know if Fnatic can get this re-engage.
Rekkles went down and got the dragon by himself.
Fnatic doing the Hitsuke right there, getting themselves a surprise Drake.
And it's a fire on the other side as well, the Infernal Drake for them. So Fnatic pick up their first dragon of the game and now can set up vision around that river once again. NIP have shown that they know how to play these fights. They're kiting in and kiting back well. Fnatic keep going for this pincer strategy that doesn't quite seem to be connecting.
It's difficult for Fnatic to really force the engagement. They want to dive onto Nagne, but so far there's always been some blocker on the side of NIP that makes it difficult for Fnatic to get onto that target, whether it be Sprattel standing in the way, Shook waiting for that perfect ulti. So many key ultimates available to disengage as Fnatic now start off the Baron as NIP, they're looking to go back.
They destroy the Disc of the Sun, but that's not the tower you want to be taking down at this point. Fnatic will secure themselves a 32-minute Baron, their second of the game. And if they can utilize this one as effectively as they utilize the first, it may spell the end of NIP.
Big oversight there from NIP. They thought that they could go back to base. They thought that with just having a fight with Fnatic, they would want to go back, reset. But instead, Fnatic, they're more than happy to force another one.
sOAZ with the mind-reading strategies, not straight into the bush with the charge, and NIP are perhaps looking for a re-engage here, as Broxah is low on the front line. He has to jump out.
Fnatic then forced back.
Streamer Shuffle doesn't connect, and now we'll see the re-engage of Great Shockwave. HeaQ's jumped off towards the side. Watch HeaQ! He's going to do so much damage in this fight. Prophet with the Gnar into the wall, and HeaQ gets one. He's looking for more. Rekkles still alive, but now he's dead. It's a triple for HeaQ. Can he get the Penta? sOAZ gets chunked out. Broxah jumps away, and NIP not quite able to get the ace, but they win the fight against Fnatic.
I promised you team fights, and you finally get one.
Oh, baby.
Super late into the game, 4 for 3 in favor of NIP. They will be able to infiltrate onto Fnatic's base. They still hold on to the kill lead, but that is a lot of Baroned up members that will now be deceased. With these death timers, NIP, they could look to continue that push.
HeaQ's going to jump away, so I'm gonna say they'll disengage for the time being. Now, Vedius, I want to come back to the win conditions we discussed earlier on. We said NIP in team fights are looking for these messy team fights against Fnatic.
Well, you have to be careful of the two AD carries because they both scale extremely well along with the Shockwave. Now, the big thing here is the fact that Caps misses the ulti. Imagine a 5-man ulti right now. No, he doesn't. He waits for Nagne to overstep. The idea was good, but the execution was poor. That allows a good Shockwave to come off the back end. Caps then drops, a lot of the DPS disappears while HeaQ is still alive. Nagne had already done his job, so it doesn't matter if he drops. And now you're in the situation where HeaQ has no threats on the backline. He's able to shred through the front line of Fnatic, even get the kill down onto Rekkles, who did get a triple kill in that fight, but it was not enough to swing things in their favor.
It's the first time he's played Xayah this year, so we'll give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, especially since he did 8,000 damage in that last fight. However, NIP have shown us that they can win these fights if they engage them on their terms. If Prophet is able to get in there with a big Gnar. Gold is perfectly even. We've seen swings, and this Baron buff has actually been bad for Fnatic. Last one, they got 6,000 gold. This time, they have bled 3,000 gold, and we're getting to the late game portion where we thought Fnatic would be the stronger team.
Well, we are full late game right now, and these fights are all about execution. sOAZ, his engage was decent. Broxah engage was decent, but the follow-up wasn't there. Fnatic, they need to be engaging together. They need to be utilizing this Caps ulti, Jeziz's ulti, to really get the proper strength of their 5v5 composition, which so far they are not doing. They're a little bit too sporadic, a little bit too broken. As NIP take advantage of that, they thrive in the chaos. This is a team that was nurtured mainly from solo queue tactics for a long time. We criticized their ability to work as a team, and their teamwork has now become better while also having that background behind them, knowing how to succeed in a situation that doesn't look initially in their favor.
This is the perfect conglomeration of the NIP teams we've seen across the split. Their early game was strong. They had a 2,000 gold lead at the 15-minute mark, and now we'll let them off with a couple of Barons that they lost out on, but their late game seems to have rounded out a little bit more as well. They are challenging what many people think is the best team in Europe at the 35-minute mark, when Fnatic are known to be this incredible team-fighting powerhouse.
And the only caveat to that is Fnatic are playing some champions that are not in their own custom wheelhouse. So don't take anything away from NIP. They are playing very well, but this is also arguably not the strongest form of Fnatic that does exist. Regardless, very close game between these two teams. When you are 1-11 in the regular season versus a 10-1 team, I don't care if you're playing new champions, I would expect you to have a much more dominant performance, and that just goes to show how much NIP are doing in this game.
Fnatic only able to take a small amount of gold off that last Baron play, and once again we see Fnatic set up this bush in the side. Kled is a little bit of a way away, but he has of course got the charge. Jesiz does not connect with the hook, and perhaps the game is up for Fnatic. Trying to play ninjas against the ninjas, they couldn't quite do it. Sprattel runs in, they use the talisman. Look at Prophet on the backliners. Rekkles wrecks his way through his HP. The Disc of the Sun falls. The NIP have not quite found the engage they'd like. Prophet goes into Mega, does have the teleport if they want to join up, but Fnatic are going down towards the bottom lane.
Now, Fnatic, they have the path advantage, which will allow Caps to get there quickly. He has to be careful of not getting cut off, though, as sOAZ trying to make the pathing for NIP a little awkward so that they cannot cut off their AD carry. Now, Dragon is the focus for Fnatic. They started it off.
Should get hooked. Dragon down to 7,000. This is a game-ending moment.
No Mega Gnar on Prophet, but he will start charging in as the Elder Drake getting very low.
Here we go, they're looking for the fight. Elder down to 2,000, Sprattel in the front line, it's reset, but perhaps NIP can take the fight. Sprattel has to flash Ask, sOAZ is gonna jump straight back in. Nagne caught up with the bear trap, and sOAZ is all by himself. The Elder Drake, oh shit, you stole it away, and NIP are gonna take the fight as well. Broxah is gonna get melted by HeaQ. NIP just rolling their way through this Fnatic squad. sOAZ is on the backline as well, and NIP are going to try and chase him down.
He's still alive!
He wants to kill the cow, but no beef for you today, sOAZ. NIP with a superb team fight around the Elder Drake.
HeaQ walks away with the triple kill. They walk away with the Elder and win out a team fight versus the rank 1 team in Europe. NIP looking convincing as they infiltrate the base of Fnatic and take down the inhibitor.
And imagine if you are a challenger team at the moment at Vedius. Imagine if you're a Giants or Schalke or even Mysterious Monkeys and you look at this NIP roster and you say, how do we face this? How do we fight against a team that can take down Fnatic?
This is the top lane that we expected from SKT. We're bringing it back onto the team fight. So it gets started off by Fnatic. Their focus is the Elder Drake. They then move away because they actually want to go for the fight rather than the objective. The problem is they can't really decide on who they want to engage on. Caps still holding on to his ultimate. Once NIP back away, they think that they can go for it, but this time around, HeaQ wins out on the smite fight, and the moment they lose that Elder Drake, that is 3 Drakes stacking on top of the Elder, which means that NIP have suddenly so much more damage. Fnatic realize they have to disengage, and now they're going to use it to force the Baron.
It's a Baron as well for NIP. This is the late game team fighting team we wanted to see. HeaQ has performed exemplary on this Tristana this game. And I have been buzzed by my stats team. Rekkles with this build now has a 100% critical strike chance, but HeaQ is still able to outdamage him in fights.
That's just because, one, the range advantage that Tristana has over his opposition, but also how difficult it is for Rekkles to get into these fights. Yes, he has a lot of strong self-peel with the feathers and with his ultimate, but when those are down, it becomes very difficult, whereas HeaQ, he gets reset. If a single member drops, he has another jump. He can use it to disengage, he can use it to re-engage, and his ulti is a much more effective tool at pushing the opposition away, and maybe even setting up his allies to shut down their opposition. Now, Fnatic, they realize they can't go for a base race because they are definitely going to lose against the Baron Elder Dragon team. So they're going to go back to base, and this is where NIP could look to get themselves a game over Fnatic.
Huge minion wave here to help them out. HeaQ in the front line. There's the turret falling. Inhib tower down. Inhib down in the mid as well. Rekkles with no ultimate now as NIP push forward into the base. These are no ninja tactics, Vedius. This is brute force from the ninjas in Pyjamas as they look for their second inhibitor and perhaps the game.
Things looking tense right now. NIP, they don't want to overcommit. They don't want to throw this fight. We've seen Fnatic in this position before. Backs against the wall. One team fight could swing it, and they've done it. So NIP showing the respect. They take the inhib, they walk away. 2 inhibs down, only 1 left to fall. 2 minutes left on the Baron. They only have to make their way up top and continue the siege as Fnatic are crumbling under the pressure.
NIP as well now have a 7,000 gold lead over Fnatic. The biggest margin we have seen this game, and one of the biggest margins I'm sure Fnatic have faced in a long, long time. They are fully built, apart from a couple of items here or there. NIP looks strong.
And that's why this gold lead is impressive. It means so little at this point in the game, because so many of the major items are completed. Both these AD carries are effectively at full build. Only a death cap remains for either of these mid laners before they can become fully fledged wizards, but they already deal a huge amount of damage. You can just see Azir, yes, Cap, his impact in these fights has not been massive, but he's been dealing some serious damage, and unfortunately for him, he just hasn't been able to get that one Shurima shuffle that can swing the fight in his favor. He can still do it though. Keep your eyes on that man, because he will be the one to turn this game if there's anyone going to do it from Fnatic.
This is the moment for an MVP play from one of these Fnatic members. Caps, Broxah, Rekkles, they've all stood up. sOAZ, Jesiz, they've all made plays across the split. But if you want to go out on a win, this is the time you have to do it. NIP looking for only their second series win across the course of the split. And they already have 2 inhibitors down, remember. Those waves are going to push in bot and in the mid lane.
NIP, they just have to be patient. Don't overcommit. HeaQ, he takes a large chunk of damage, but they know that bottom mid will eventually push in. They have good vision control around the flanks. They know what Fnatic is trying to do. Nagne, interesting passing there from the Orianna, backing away very far from his team.
Gets the Baron buff on the minions here, brings them there a little bit quicker.
Good spot there.
It doesn't matter because NIP want to go in for the fight. They force Jesiz back, and here come the minions as well. Caps flashes away from the Glacial Prison. The hook does not connect, and NIP will take their third inhibitor tower of the game. They're looking for the inhib as well. There's a flank opportunity for sOAZ. He's coming in, gets onto the back line. Jesiz there as well. As Fnatic try and make the final fight, they take one. Sprattel's dead, sOAZ low. Shook, Nagne and HeaQ are still alive in that back line, though, and Profit is doing work. Fnatic, the shockwave connects, but HeaQ's not there to deal any more damage. Here jumps Caps, but the Shurima shuffle is dodged by the Tristana, and NIP will be able to back away, but HeaQ does not want to. sOAZ in the front line has got a He gets back onto Scar, he gets knocked up, and that's a dead sOAZ for the time being.
Look at the base!
Nexus Towers going down, Caps builds another one. It's just going to make as many Nexus Towers as he needs. Two members of Fnatic are dead.
It looked bad for NIP at the start, but HeaQ saves it in the end. They're going to get themselves another inhibitor. They have the man advantage. There is little that stands in their way. NIP, they're looking to end the game now.
The old kings and the new may both fall on the same day. G2 lost earlier. Fnatic are staring down the barrel of a loss in the first game of this series. NIP, unable to close it out, will retreat and pull themselves away from the base of Fnatic.
So now we just have to calm ourselves, Medic. Many great fights have happened on this fight.
Thank you, Vedius. Thank you for predicting team fights.
So let's have a look at how this happened. The flank from sOAZ, you called it, Medic. You're waiting for it to happen, but it goes onto the front line of Sprattel and Shook. Those two melt like paper. They are nothing to the damage of Caps and Rekkles at this point in the game, and it could end in disaster if Profit does not get that four-man ultimate, followed by the four-man shockwave of Nagne to turn it in their favor. Just such small outplays coming out from both sides keep eventually resulting in NIP's success, result in a beautiful team fight that could have gone either way if just a few crucial abilities landed. If there was just a little bit more damage, Nagne could have dropped. If there was just a little bit more better positioning from Fnatic, that stun wouldn't have locked up from Profit. Such subtle things that could have swung the fight either way.
And a member of NIP that has definitely swung this game is HeaQ. Pumping out the damage in these fights. He's yet to be killed in an incredibly bloody affair between these two teams. HeaQ has been on point with his positioning and been aggressive at times you wouldn't expect a member of the bottom place team in Group A.
And it's so bittersweet that all these bottom teams are now stepping up right at the last hurdle where they gain nothing from it. They are yet to close the game. If Fnatic win a fight, they can still take it. Remember that there is very little standing between NIP and their Nexus 2. But let's see which team will come out on top. Right now, it is looking NIP favored. They have the minions, they have the pressure. They have everything they need to close out the game. Will they be able to jump that last hurdle standing in their way?
A hurdle they've only jumped a few times before this split. Shook perhaps looking for Jesiz. Here comes the charge from sOAZ. He wants to get onto NIP, jumps onto Sprattel, and immediately Fnatic back off. They can't go on the cow. Here comes the engage, and that is a dead Jesiz once again, but sOAZ does get onto the back line. Can he catch out anyone? No! NIP with two, and Fnatic have to run back to the fountain because HeaQ is on a rampage. He's on the warpath. NIP will collapse onto Fnatic. They'll take the win. They'll take the kills, and they will take the Nexus as well. NIP defeat the old Kings and go 1-0 up.
Massive victory for the Ninjas in Pyjamas. Medic, I hate to say I told you so. Well,
you did not tell me so.
Last week, I said on a cast with QuickShot that Roccat gave Fnatic a hard time. And because NIP defeated Roccat 2-0, they were in fact a step above the team. Roccat were able to take down G2, and now we're seeing the fruit of the labor. NIP really doing what Roccat could not do and taking down Fnatic in game one.
G2 also pushed SKT at MSI, so you're now telling me that NIP are better than Roccat, who are better than SKT, who are better than G2, who are better than Fnatic.
In fact, what I'm telling you.
Excellent, good to know, Vedius, good to know. What an incredible game from NIP, and you can see Fnatic, you know, they experimented a little bit, but they're definitely rocked onto their heels here, with NIP being able to take the game against them in a portion of the game where you'd think Fnatic would be stronger.
I feel like my eyes were just very heavily on Caps. When you look at the Azir, he didn't play the Azir badly, he just wasn't able to make that game-changing play on it compared to what we saw from Nagne. The number of huge shockwaves that swung a fight in NIP's favor was so much more significant than any Azir ultis that we saw throughout the game. I don't even know if Caps in the late game landed that ulti onto multiple members of NIP or even a single member because flashes were always up. There was a dodge ready and available. Just Caps could not have that same level of impact that Nagne could. And I feel like when you pair that up with the 2 AD carries as well, that was the big deciding factor in these late game fights. And Azir, he is a champion that we have not seen for a while. He has an extremely high skill cap. He takes a while to get used to. And by no means am I saying that Caps cannot play this champion, but in this sort of a scenario, in this level of tension, it is much harder to execute than that of Orianna's Nagne.
That it is. Ninjas in Pyjamas came up with a shocking victory in a dramatic Game 1. Let's send it to the analyst desk to break it down.
Thank you very much, Medic. And we also have G2's coach, Youngbuck, joining us for this series, who I can only imagine must be a broken man after not winning the series and seeing that NIP can beat Fnatic. Or am I wrong? You still seem pretty jolly.
It's pretty bitter now realizing that maybe we had a chance at actually getting first place on Saturday.
But you were telling me beforehand that mentally the team had already taken into account that probably quarterfinals would be where you guys would end up.
Yeah, already a few weeks ago, we pretty much thought to ourselves that we were going to finish second. And when they beat Misfits 2-0, that was pretty much the final nail in the coffin for our hopes. So in the end, it's not that big of a deal that we lost to Rocket mentally. However, now that they're losing to NIP, that might be very bitter.
Now it's turning into a bigger mental blow. Good thing we had that Telestrator segment about how Fnatic is crushing it in every category. That is a caster curse if I have ever seen one. But let's take a look at how both teams approach this game, and especially Fnatic, because their manager, Quay, he tweeted, well, the best way to approach these games that don't matter is trying new things, but not trolling. And we will see that reflected in the draft as well. We saw for 3 of the members the first champion picks of this year for them. And you guys were discussing about the 2 compositions, especially for NIP. It's good that they take something that is easy or simple to execute, right? So you were differing in opinion on what exactly was easier to execute.
Well, we had a long discussion on how the team fight can start and how you end up playing it out. In my opinion, Tristana, and I think you agree with me, is way easier to play in a team fight than a Xayah. And I think that's one thing that we'll get to replace in a little bit that we end up seeing really work for NIP.
Right. I think the real deal here is that Fnatic has to win team fights by isolating Orianna and hopefully find Orianna when she doesn't have flash with the Jarvan, follow up with the Kled ult, which is pretty difficult to get to her if she's actually like, she's the only target in her team that can get flashed on by Jarvan, because Tristana can't be jumped on, Gnar can't be jumped on. So Orianna just has to be really careful. And if he recognizes that, which he did because he didn't get ulted by Jarvan in every team fight, then it's pretty easy for NIP to just execute their team comp.
And I think that's where the difficulty of Fnatic ends up being in the execution, is they basically are relying on Broxah to engage at all points. And Broxah, he builds tanky, he's got himself items, but you look at the other members of the team that ended up trying to engage. sOAZ tries to get the flanks. We saw Caps attempt on the Azir a few times to get the engage, and it's not necessarily their job as such, and it's very difficult to actually get those engages to work against what NIP were bringing to the table.
I'd also love to get your opinion on Azir. We did see the W buff in 7.15, but we have seen him arise a bit more. Senkux just picked him last week as well. What is the verdict on the viability of Azir, Joey?
I think Azir is not tier 1, but he is viable. He's pretty good against some of the new supports, like Alistar is very prominent, against which Azir is very good. And also some of the tanks, like Maokai, is very difficult to play against Azir, so that's why we're seeing more of him.
I think one thing that makes Azir a little more difficult than the last time we saw Azir in the meta is last time Rylai's was super strong, and you just go Rylai's Nashes and you would take over every team fight because nobody could ever get close to you at all. Rylai's got nerfed, Azir has some difficult matchups, and you saw later on, like, Caps had damage, but wasn't confident moving forward enough because the rest of his team wasn't providing quite that front line. So Azir does still have a place against tanks specifically. It's just a little less easy as when Azir could just slow everybody for a million years.
A lot of talk about the compositions. Let's see them in action. Let's take a look at a couple of team fights. We've seen in the last couple of weeks that NIP's early game had deteriorated, but they were closing out games better. However, in this game, they also start out really well.
Yeah, this is one of the ways that NIP end up playing the mid game quite well, and Fnatic play into their hands. Caps gets picked off, and this results in the Baron attempt out of NIP, which gets stolen away. But it's these kind of plays which meant Fnatic really struggled, and Shook actually capitalized on that kind of play where he's starting the fight, catching out caps. Fnatic just didn't seem prepared for it.
No, they didn't. NIP do pull out that early Baron call. I don't think that was a wrong call per se, but it is quite difficult to execute. They keep winning fights. Do you think, Joey, that the fact that from Fnatic, they said they tried new things, of course, Caps first time on Azir, for instance, Xayah the first time for Rekkles, do you think that was kind of to blame for the fact that Fnatic didn't seem as comfortable in the map rotations and in the engages?
No, I don't think they're playing anything that they haven't practiced or that isn't viable. And I know that Caps has played more Azir in solo queue and in scrims, and Rekkles has played a lot of Xayah and solo queue throughout the split. They just had a very difficult to execute team composition, and we just saw a clip where they made a very fatal mistake because they got caught in a moment where both their bot lane and their top lane were pushed into their tower. So if you get caught at that moment, you're going to lose a lot. And NIP had a really very simple opportunity to just get the Baron for free if they wanted to use Alistar to headbutt the Jarvan away, or they could have just chosen to recall and just get vision everywhere on the map because they had the opportunity to do that and just control the game very slowly. However, the Baron steal was the only reason that kept them in the game.
Yeah, Broxah, hero move, he steals it. Fnatic, they swing it back in their favor a little bit. Was NIP knew that they had the upper hand in the team fights, and when those came along, they were able to pull the trigger.
Exactly, and it's HeaQ's good positioning in a couple of team fights that we really want to highlight. A lot of it is Fnatic reaching for engages. As we look at the next replay, it's the fight that happened in the jungle around the red buff. And Joey, I know you were impressed by HeaQ, specifically in this fight.
Yeah, so it starts off with Jarvan not finding Orianna, which is exactly what NIP wants. And then we can see HeaQ just jumping over the wall in a second, finding a really good angle to shoot everyone from, and then he can keep jumping and he just gets kill after kill after kill because no one can touch him.
And importantly, he manages to shut down Rekkles as well. Nice ult comes from Prophet, who had a good game on Gnar. As you said, early on in the fight, the flash out from Orianna is so key because it then soaks Fnatic into the rest of the fight. And this is where Tristana is just so much easier because you have the rocket jump to reset. And we saw exactly the same thing happen again. NIP actually secure this Elder Drake. And then it looks like HeaQ is in a lot of trouble once he kites up the ramp. But the first kill of the fight, I believe, gives him that first reset to be able to get into a safe position and end up taking the fight. I think this is the kind of game that means HeaQ, through the promotion tournament, probably not getting his hands on Tristana. Well, even if they lose a series in the end for NIP, Joey, NIP is going to the promotion tournament, and a win like this, which is now their 6th game win of the split, they must try and take something from that because these compositions work for them and they know that they can beat top teams. So it must give them confidence. Yeah, the drafts are solid. The early games looked really fine. They were playing to their win condition, and they make a few mistakes here and there, but it looks like they are better than the relegation teams. Yeah. Now, we were very harsh on G2 when you guys didn't manage to beat Roccat. So do we have any foregone conclusions about Fnatic, Stress? No, I don't think there are any foregone conclusions. I think it's a small excuse to say they've locked first place. You still expect Fnatic to beat NIP. I still expect them to come back 2-1. If they don't, I would be very surprised. Well, we will see what happens. The Ninjas in Pyjamas, they are looking to end the split with a great win against Fnatic. We'll see if they can close it out when we return.